And then we started a series last weekend called The Next Right Thing. Excited about this one. We're really looking at just how do we make decisions? How do we do that? Like, how do we process through and look at, especially when there are decisions that kind of seize us up and cause us to pause. We want to know that we're making the decisions that would bring honor to God and that we're in the right ballpark, right? And so we said the next right thing is what we're going to be talking about for the next several weeks. And if you missed last week's conversation, I encourage you to catch up on that one. I kind of gave us a starting point to think about the rest of the weeks and our time together. And really what we're doing over the course of this series, you want to almost think of this series as like one big conversation almost, right, over many weeks. And if you're in the middle of making a decision, maybe you're thinking about making a major life choice, like you're thinking about moving or buying a house or what college to go to or something in that ballpark, maybe take the whole series in if you can, if you have time and space to, before landing on an actual decision, because these kind of all build on each other. What we're doing over the course of this series is we're asking a series of questions that we're really turning into prayers, right? We're framing those into prayers, and we're looking at kind of letting those questions and those prayers eliminate bad decisions, right? A big piece of what we want to learn and take away from this is a huge part of making great decisions is eliminating a ton of bad ones, right? If we can get rid of bad decisions and be in the ballpark where we can make some good ones, we're going to do a lot better. And so that's where we're headed. And we'll kind of walk through 4 questions today that help us get closer to that ballpark. I'll just warn you, we're not going to get all the way there. There's more series to come, but we'll give you some things to work on if you're in the middle of making a decision right now that you can take away and run with on your own time. Here's the conversation that we started last week. Catch up online if you want to, but here's the kind of the questions that we really looked at. This big question, have I chosen to follow Jesus and his kingdom? Right, that's kind of where we started. We said, man, if you say yes to that question, you have eliminated an enormous amount of bad decisions by saying that this is what my life is going to be about. I'm going to be somebody that looks at and follows the person of Jesus, and I want this to be what my life is defined by. Right? I want his reign. That's the word kingdom means rule and reign. I want his rule and reign to define my life. I want to be under the leadership of Jesus. And just as quick review, it's just important. You need to understand as we're talking about decision making and the next right thing, we aren't making decisions to earn a relationship or earn favor with God. The whole message, the good news of the gospel is that Jesus came as a man, lived a perfect life, died an innocent death. That's what the cross was about. He rose from the dead, and then he looks at every human being on the planet essentially and says, hey, I've already paid for your sin. Will you receive forgiveness for your sin? Will you follow me, and will you let me give you new life? That's the offer that's on the table. So if you're here and you're investigating your faith, that's what Jesus did for us, right? He lived a perfect life and died an innocent death. And now today he offers you and I life when we believe in him. We have faith in his name and say, I want to follow him. So the person looking to make good decisions, the next right thing, the heart and the motivation of what's going on in here is we're looking to say, how do I say thank you to Jesus? How do I exercise faith in him? Because I've believed that he knows the best way and that what he says should, and I want it to, define and direct me, right? That's kind of the heart of it. So it's not to earn favor. It's to say thank you and to purposely put myself under the leadership of Christ, right? So that's that first question. So if you're here today and you're kind of jumping in the conversation, make sure to dial into that last one because this one kind of defines all the rest. Now, here's the first new one we're going to walk into today. And here's what it's going to sound like. Lord, is this against your will for everyone? Right? Is this against your will for everyone? And essentially what this question is doing is asking the question, is what I'm about to do a sin? Is really what we're saying. And there's a reality that I can go ahead and I can eliminate a huge number of decisions that might be over here and say, I know that this is not going to be a place that I want to land. If I'm considering making a decision over here, I can just go ahead and say, you know what, all of these are off the table because I know that's not what Jesus would want me to do. And I know that that's not just what Jesus wouldn't want me to do. I know that's what Jesus wouldn't want anybody to do that, right? And so the Bible's pretty clear about a whole bunch of things. There's some things the Bible is less clear on, but over here in this section, well, I can look and say, basically, is this wrong? Is this a clear sin from a Bible perspective? I can know that Jesus would never want anybody to do that, right? And that's the idea, right? So you might look and say, if you're married and you're saying, man, I'm kind of sick of this person. I'd like to trade this one out and get a new one maybe, right? And you might be considering that decision. And I would look at you and say, hey, God would look at you and say, that's not how marriage works. All right, I made it, I designed it, I defined it, and that's not how it's set up. You don't just like trade them out whenever you want to. There are some biblical reasons for divorce, right? There's biblical reasons that allow you to make that decision in kind of a worst case scenario, right? The emergency brake scenario. But in general, I'm sick of that one, I don't want to be with them anymore, isn't a reason to get divorced, right? So if you're considering that, I would look at you and say, wait a minute, if you're a follower of Jesus, considering taking that step, you should work through the process to conclude, wait a minute, I land over here, that's not even on the table for me. That's not even an option. That's like not an option I can pursue. And I realize that some of us, you're maybe newer in your faith and you're like, wow, that's how we're... I remember being a brand new follower of Jesus, feeling the need for some limitations. Like when all the things are on the table, it feels overwhelming. It actually is very helpful to know there are some decisions that are straight up not good for me, not good for other people, and are offensive to God. And if I can eliminate those choices, that's huge, right? And so a huge thing that we learn when we go to begin to read the Bible and understand what it says is we find out what God really cares about, right? And it's not the kind of thing that, just because you landed over here or you did something over here that you're out of the family doesn't mean necessarily that you're going to hell. You might have gone to a church where you experienced that. It's like growing up in a healthy family. And if you're a child growing up in a healthy family, you kind of know what the big no-nos are from mom and dad, right? You're like, that is not acceptable. We don't do that here. That's this. We don't do that here. In fact, the price tag on these decisions was the life of Jesus. He paid for that. And so we don't want to live over there anymore. Okay, so that's going to eliminate a huge number of decisions. I'm going to look and say, in general, no one should be having sex outside of marriage who are followers of Jesus. I'm not going to hold somebody who's not a follower of Jesus accountable if they haven't made a decision to follow that. I'm talking about me. I can't make that decision because that would land me in a sinful place, right? And you can go on and on and on, and you would find me lying, stealing, all kinds of things are down that road, and that would pull me out of all of those decisions, right? So here's the first question. Lord, is this against your will kind of for everybody? Nobody should land over there. Here's the next question. The next question is this. Lord, is this against your will for me? Is this against your will for me? Is my conscience clear? This one is a little bit harder to work with, and so we're going to dive into it a little bit, okay? Here's the prayer that we see in Psalm 139. I love this. Search me, God. Search me. Know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there's any offensive way in me. Lead me in the way everlasting. So, right, part of what I want to do is I want to almost, create guardrails in my decisions. And I don't want to land over here in the things that are totally, clearly wrong, right? Eliminate those. I also don't want to land over here where I am choosing something, that is going to violate my conscience. It's going to violate my conscience. So what I have to work through in this part is I have to begin to ask the question, kind of what is driving my decisions? Can I make this decision in faith, in good faith, with a clear conscience, where I don't have guilt around it, where I have a good understanding around it? And I got to let God kind of sift my motivations or my heart. What's driving this decision? Why am I doing it? And some things, guys, this is an important part of it. Some things are going to be fine for some people, and some things are going to be not fine for me, and vice versa. There are areas that are not over here areas. And let's use alcohol, for example. It's an easy one to pick on, okay? Drunkenness in the Bible is over here. Nobody, never, right? We should never land over there. That's actually a very clear thing in the Bible. Some of you are like, uh-oh, right? That's okay, you're fine. You're in the right place, right? I don't want to land over here. Drinking a drink of alcohol is actually a decision that is not necessarily over here. It might be a decision that would land over here if you are someone who would say, you know what, I have alcoholism in my family. You might look at the decision to engage alcohol even at a very casual level and say, that's not for me. That's not for me. Somebody else could say, you have the freedom, oh boy, breaking stuff, thank you. You might not want to sit in these front rows. You just never know what you have to do, right? Right? That's not for me. So somebody else might say, I don't feel the freedom of my conscience isn't violated by that decision. I can do that in good faith and I'm okay. I want to work through the process of figuring out what's going on in my heart, and can I do this in a way that isn't going to lead me into sin or into damage. And somebody might land in a place where their conscience is clear in that decision, and somebody might not. And right, we might land in kind of different places on that. I got to work through these set of questions. And this area over here is going to define a ton. It's going to define a ton. So much is what I'm going to dig into my heart and ask questions about, is this okay for me? Is this good for me? You might have different media choices that you might make than somebody else. Your conscience might be okay or feel free to do something and somebody else doesn't. Where this is going to show up a bunch is going to be in convictions and decisions where we have areas of freedom, or sometimes we call gray areas. Some people, we used this example last week, some people are going to look and say, you know what, I'm going to choose this schooling option for my kids. We're going to go to Christian school. We believe that this is going to be really helpful. Somebody else might say, you know what, I really want to be in the public schools and I want to be a light there. Somebody else might decide to homeschool their kids. All of those are wonderful options. They all might be wonderful decisions to make. None of them are inherently right or wrong. And what we're going to get into is understanding that decision doesn't land here. There's not a way to do that. There's a conscience decision and a conviction decision to say, what is God leading me to do or not do? And that helps me get clearer on what God is working in my heart and mind, right? There's an enormous amount of honesty that is needed here with ourselves, and we're going to get into this in the weeks to come. This is also a great place to talk and have wise counsel show up, where you say, hey, this is the thing I'm thinking about, and you might run that by people in your life, and they're like, yeah, I don't know if that's a great idea for you, right? We'll talk about that, right? And there's people in our lives, our wisdom team, that helps protect us from that. Okay, so I don't want to land over here, guardrail, clearly sin, something God does not want me to do, and then I've got to work through and make sure I stay in a place where I am making decisions from a clear conscience, and most of that has to do with working it out with God. Let me just say this. What decision-making has done in and for me, and I think this will probably be your experience too, if you do it like we're talking about it, is it drives me to go seek God in a way that is hard to do like in a normal situation. I have to go seek God and his wisdom and what he wants for me harder. I don't know what to pick, Lord. I don't know what the right thing is. I don't know what my conscience always has in it. So I got to seek and start to figure out what is going on here. What do I really believe about this for my decision, even though it might be different than somebody else's? And not everybody will agree with my decisions here. We don't need uniformity here in the body of Christ, and that's huge. Some of you need to hear that today because you've grown up in situations or churches where everybody had to do all of this stuff the same or you were judged for it. If you didn't homeschool or if you didn't do that or if you ever watched that one thing, listen, we rise and fall and answer to God, right? And what we help each other to do is to do this. And what I got to worry about in my life, I got to make sure I am doing the work personally to ask God the questions of what's going on in me. And as I seek him, how does that define and direct what I might choose in my life? Right, we'll see it as we go forward. If it's not here, I work through this process. Now, there's another decision and clarifier that we're going to go into. Here's the next one. Lord, here's the question. Lord, will this cause others to stumble? Will this cause others to stumble? Now, even before we start to define this and look at this passage, which is loaded, it's a loaded passage we're going to open up. When we're talking about stumbling, we're not talking about people being offended. You are going to make decisions that offend other people. I regularly offend people. Some of you are in this room, right? It's okay. We offend people. Jesus offended people. So I'm not super worried, actually, about offending people. I am worried about causing someone to stumble. And what we're going to see here in a minute is this verse in Romans 14:1. He says, "Except the one whose faith is weak, without quarreling over disputable matters." The person whose faith is weak is the one who stumbles by my decisions. And here's the idea. When somebody is a newer believer or they're having a hard time maybe they're getting traction in their faith, and they watch you make a decision that you're like, you know what, I totally have a clear conscience about this. I can drink alcohol in public and it's fine. You might say that. That new believer, maybe they don't have a clear conscience on that issue. And when they see you do that, they would look and say, now maybe I'm okay to do it too, even though it's a violation of their conscience. They're weaker in their faith, they're newer in their faith, and they're led into sin because of the choices of other people. That this idea of the weaker brother is a big deal. And part of what our filter needs to be is that I want to make decisions driven and motivated by love. I don't want to cause somebody who is weaker in their faith or newer in their faith to stumble. Here's another example of how this may show up. All of us in this room, I'm sure, have political opinions. Okay, we probably all do, and you probably should at some level. I'm not going to tell you what they should be, but you should probably have some version of those. That's great and fine. And when we make a decision to take that political opinion and to go post that to every single person that is connected to our social media account, there's a high likelihood that there are some weaker brothers in the mix there that either are brand new in their faith or considering they're working through, and this elevation of this issue might cause them to stumble and say, wait a minute, is this what Jesus is really about? I know that person's a follower of Christ and they're ranting about that. That is a decision we would look and say, be careful. Be careful. Make sure you think that through. It's not to say there should never be a post about that, but I'm going to do it very, very, very carefully and be mindful that I might cause others to stumble in their faith. Not talking about being offended, right? I'm not talking about stable followers of Jesus just being offended because of a decision or opinion we have. I'm talking about people being disrupted in their faith because of decisions that we made. Even though it clears a conscience, we would look and say, wait a minute, I'm probably going to eliminate some of those decisions because that decision it can't be made mostly from love. It's going to cause somebody else to stumble. Now, here's where this shows up in the Bible. This is a loaded passage. I'll walk it through with you real quick. Romans 14:5 says this: one person considers one day more sacred than another. We looked at this last week. Another considers every day alike. Each of them should be fully convinced in their own mind. Whoever regards one day as special does so to the Lord. Whoever eats meat does so to the Lord, for they give thanks to God. And whoever abstains does so to the Lord and give thanks to God. Here's the idea in the ancient world. Some people were coming from a Jewish background, and they viewed some days as special between them and God. It's a special day to honor God. Other people had none of that. And so they're like, every day is a day to honor God with. They're all kind of the same. Paul's going to say both of those approaches have the same motivation. They have the same motivation to bring honor and glory to God. That's the heart. Even though they landed on different sides of that issue, they're going to have the same motive driving it to please God and to point to him. Guys, part of this, and he's going to say the same thing about meat, right? And eating meat. Part of how God works in this way is he is often going to be the one that puts convictions and helps us move through our conscience, where we end up landing in different places in life, making different decisions, because God uses us in different places in life to reach different people as we're trying to seek and glorify him. Some of us are going to be called to full-time ministry, and you're going to land there. Maybe some of you in this room, you're like, oh, me? What? Didn't know that was on the agenda. That might be you. I didn't know that was going to be my path. So some of you are going to say, you know what? I feel compelled to be in this job or this role or this kind of neighborhood, this situation, because I think God can use me here. I believe God can use me to reach these neighbors, or God can use me to connect with this kind of person. And as we seek God and seek to find him in the midst of all of this, he's going to use us differently based on where he places us at different times and seasons in our lives. He's going to look and say, you should just be convinced, right? Be convinced on where you land, and don't judge the other person that didn't land where you landed, right? Where you're throwing stones at this guy. Right? Oh, you're not as important because you didn't land in full-time ministry. Wait a minute. I thought the Bible said everyone who follows Jesus is a priest in the kingdom of God. That means you have a ministry no matter where you land on the map, whether it's at a church or in an actual state administrator, or you're a doctor, or a lawyer, or a tow truck driver, or a plumber, you name it. God is using all kinds of people in all kinds of places. I want to seek him for where he wants to put me. That's the whole idea. It's about finding, God, where are you leading me? Where are you taking me? And can I follow you in it? So I want to land there. I want to know that my landing point might not be the same as somebody else's. But my landing point to embrace this calling might be different than somebody else's. And that's perfectly good and acceptable. It's actually how God works. Some of you will choose this path, some will choose that. As long as we are seeking God together, that's the whole point. He goes on, says, none of us lives for ourselves alone. None of us dies for ourselves alone. If we live for the Lord. If we die for the Lord. So whether we live or die, we belong to the Lord. For this very reason, Christ died and returned to life so that he might be the Lord of both the living and the dead. Paul's saying, hey, no matter where you find yourself, this thing is about living for Jesus. It's about aiming for him and his kingdom. He says, then why do you judge your brother or sister? Why do you treat them with contempt? For we will all stand before God's judgment seat. It is written, as surely as I live, says the Lord, every knee will bow before me. Every tongue will acknowledge God. This is important. He says, so then, each of us will give an account of ourselves to God. Therefore, let us stop passing judgment on one another. Instead, make up your mind not to put any stumbling block or obstacle in the way of a brother or sister, that weaker brother idea that we talked about earlier. A couple things we want to make sure we grab a hold of. Paul in this passage, and I encourage you to go read the whole chapter. Paul in this passage is going to say, guys, listen, there are disputable matters. There are disputable matters. We read that in that first verse. There are things that are not crystal clear in following Jesus, and some people land here and some people land here. We're not talking about this. This is clean and easy, simple, done. Not talking about that. We're talking about different places we might land in decision making. Should I go to a secular college or a Christian one? Should I take this job or that one? Should I live in this neighborhood and live way below? I mean, should I live in this neighborhood and reach my? What should I do with myself? He's going to say a lot of that ends up being disputable matters. We're going to land in different places on it. And what we want to do is we want to look at each other and say, I am responsible to Jesus. I don't want to cause my brother or sister to stumble as much as I can. I want to be motivated by love. And I want to recognize that God put somebody in a different spot than I am, and that's good and wonderful. That's just how it is. Right? And I don't want, when I look at the reality of what it means to, I have a clean conscience and I have total ability to make a decision, I'm not always going to be able to land in a place to flex everything that I want to do because the stumbling might happen for the weaker brother. I have to let this filter out some decisions that I otherwise might make. Okay? I may not be able to do everything I want at all times because there are weaker brothers. There are huge parts of my life that I feel a clean conscience about a lot of things, and I don't do them because it would cause weaker brothers to stumble. And you probably are going to land there too if you work this out. And here's the reality: love is more important than our liberties. Love is going to be the definer and the motivator and the engine that drives. I'm not going to demand my own way. I don't want to cause a brother to stumble. I want to let that inform how I make decisions. Okay, let's look back. I'm looking at my decisions. I'm looking and saying, Jesus and his kingdom, I land here. I want to eliminate a ton of decisions over on this side that are clearly not what God wants. I'm not going to steal. I'm not going to murder. I'm not going to be driven this way. I don't want to do any of that. Now I'm going to land over here for a minute, and probably it's over here that I'm going to spend quite a bit of time. For me, I have done some battle over here with the Lord. Sometimes I want to do things, and God's like, I don't think so, man. I want to do that, but I can't do it with a clear conscience because I know that God is wrestling me into a different direction. You say, Ryan, how does that look when I begin to approach God and ask him that question? When I begin to open my arms and my heart and my life and my hands to where I'm headed and give God access to that, God typically will get in there and challenge some things. Right? He'll typically challenge some things in me. What's driving that decision? Why are you doing that? What are you hoping to get from that? Is that actually loving your neighbors, loving people in your life? Is it bringing honor and glory to me, or is this just about what you want? Here's a good question to ask yourself. This is one I've bumped into a bunch. When I find myself rushing into a decision, I know I'm in trouble. I know I'm about to make a bad decision when it's like you can't stop the thing. It's like a freight train. I got an idea, and I'm moving towards that idea, and it doesn't really matter what anybody else thinks. I'm doing the idea, and here we go. Now that thing's got momentum behind it. Right? You ever been there? You're doing it. and you're not going to ask for advice, and you're not going to stop and think. You're not going to allow anybody to interrupt that process. if I know I'm in trouble when I'm there, and I won't let God kind of work in my heart and in my mind and work to challenge where I'm headed. Let this guardrail do its job. So you say, Ryan, where do we want to land with this? Today, if you're in the middle of making a decision, the work to do is to look and ask these set of questions. Right? Is it anything down that road? Is it anything over here? And I think we land in a place of searching. God, what is good for you? What gifts have you given me? What opportunities have you placed around and in my life? And what are you asking me to do right now? Here's the reality. God is leading you and I to a next right thing right now. Usually, I sort of kind of know what that is. I don't always admit that I know. I can live in huge chunks of denial about what that is. And I can try to get really, really busy so that I don't have to hear God say, this is the thing, man. I'm just telling you how it's worked for me. Here's the challenge in this series, okay? Here's what I think we should do, and I think we can start today. What if we just took a deep breath, even here in the room, and we gave God the space to challenge some of that momentum we have behind our decisions, to challenge the busyness that we're running in? And is it possible that the busyness that I'm running in right now could actually be me trying to get away from some questions that God's trying to ask? Maybe they're questions about this, and I'm living over here, and I'm doing stuff that I know God doesn't want me to do, and I don't really want to talk to him about it. Maybe there are questions over here, and I know I got to do some homework and some wrestling and ask some deeper questions and maybe seek some wise counsel, and I don't want to do it. I just want to do what I want to do. The whole point of the debacle that we're in trying to choose the next right thing is God is looking at us saying, I want to connect with you. I want you to seek me. I want you to want to know my heart and my mind and the wisdom that I have for your life right now. And I don't want you to miss it. And here's the final one. This is critical. I got to ask, Lord, will I regret this decision when I see you face to face? Because you read it in the passage. I'm going to see Jesus face to face. So are you. And I'm going to give an account for my life. And I already know there's a bunch of things that I'm going to regret because I've made a ton of bad decisions, frankly, along the way. A ton. I would like to make less. I would like to make quite a bit less, right? And when I think about the future, I want to be able to see Jesus, and I want him to look back at me and know that when I had a decision to make, a fork in the road, that I wrestled it through, and I found my way into this path, not veering off and outside of the guardrails, but found my way to him. And usually when I find myself off the path, it's either that I get myself so busy and out of control that I veer off into the stratosphere, or often there's something that God is asking me to do that is just straight up scary. Straight up scary. It's terrifying. And I don't want to go there, and I don't want to touch it. I don't want to forgive that person. I don't want to make that decision. I don't want to have that conversation. I don't want to bring that up. I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to put myself out there. I don't want to risk. When I see Jesus face to face, I want to know that I did my best to do right by him. because he has gone to such great lengths to do right by me. It's not to earn anything. It's a thank you, right? So, guys, this is where we land today. Can we land in a place where we wrestle this through and see ourselves on the board a little bit? And ask ourselves these questions and let God put us back into the path, driven by love, eliminating the decisions that are harmful to me and others, and pursuing what he would want for me. As the band comes up, would you bow your heads and close your eyes? Let them lead us into a time of reflection here. Father, we just need you. We need you with this. And we confess today that we don't always even know what's going on in our hearts, what our motivations are. And Lord, I'll confess it. Sometimes I let myself get so busy to avoid doing this hard work. God, would you help us with this? To believe that your ways are the best ways. And that the work of seeking you and letting you search our conscience, inform our convictions, that work of being honest with ourselves and honest with you is good work that gives us clarity and resolve and helps us to move forward in life in a way that's pleasing to you. Lord, would you work in our hearts today? Help us to seek you and let you search us with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength. Meet us here, even now.